Hello, everybody. My name is Raul Ramirez. I'm with the Catch Wrestling Alliance, and we're here to help you to elevate your grappling, and together we can keep real wrestling alive. So, hopefully, you can share our passion and desire to preserve one of the greatest grappling sports ever. It's actually like one of the ones that, like, its effects are still felt today in all kinds of grappling, and people are stealing our techniques left and right because they work. But the thing is, I think one of the things about that is like um, they don't like they. It's like they can use the technique, but they'll never uh, understand the spirit. Right? They'll never take the soul of the style, which seems really true because we kind of have our way of doing things in catch wrestling, and that I've never seen really copied by other styles. Which I think that kind of makes sense. Where it's like we're talking about different styles of food or different languages. I mean, people might want to try. Like people aren't like say in a lot of songs that are written in another language, they might have a few English words here and there, but it's definitely not an English song, right? It's like a lot of say like a lot of Japanese songs, or sometimes even some Spanish songs will have a English word in there or whatever, but still not the entirety. So same thing with stealing a technique or two from catch wrestling. You're still not stealing the soul of catch wrestling. So that's what we're trying to preserve, and we're actually trying to uh, like we're trying to spread it, but uh, people don't realize it. It's like the better you learn it, the more you can use it in real matches, and it can actually help you to win matches. But that kind of brings me to today's point: is that like is everyone brainwashed? But I think we just kind of have to look at what happened with modern grappling, because in modern grappling, and kind of like in nogi in particular, but um, there's just kind of like the way things are done in modern grappling. A lot of people call it. I've seen a lot of comments online where they try to say that um, it is at its like it's evolved, and all the things that are practical have been included in the style, and everything that's not practical has been omitted, and it's kind of like at its most refined point nowadays. So um, I would have to disagree. I'd have to disagree a lot, but that's the thing. It's like if we know some better way to do things, or but it's because it's not part of the mainstream, um, then it's not very well known, and it's also not very well accepted. So I think that's kind of the problem we're facing in catch wrestling, uh, because like I can kind of see in the comments where it's like I think the kind of like the mainstream mindset, particularly of jujitsu, the way things are done in jujitsu, I think that's really uh, I would to put it nicely, saying in affecting, but it's kind of infecting people's ways of thinking or ways of thought. So one of the things that's been coming up recently over and over is like, say if we post something where it shows um, like you kind of give your back even a little bit to your opponent, even though there's no danger to you whatsoever, really, because if you know how to pin someone, if you know how to control and restrain somebody, you're not in danger whatsoever. But inevitably, you know, on different social media accounts, people will have to comment. They're like, "No, that's you're exposing your back," and it's like, do you know anything about wrestling? Because even in amateur wrestling, giving someone your back is actually preferable uh, than to like give them like your chest and you be on your back, face up, right? Because you lose, right? Um, but even though a lot of people might be doing nogi, is my opinion that it is still preferable to give them your back as opposed to being chest to chest, and especially if you are on your back on the mat, because then you got a lot of things going against you. I mean, yes, there are a lot of people who are able to get submission victories from their back, right? But I think that's happening less and less. Even if you look at A lot of the no-gi matches that have been happening recently. I mean, the could have been last week, right, where we talked about Craig Jones talking about never pulling guard, and then or like vowing to never pull guard again, and then he had his match, and he kind of had to, but basically nothing happened. Both guys, even though they're really well respected in the jiu-jitsu community, they're considered very high-level grapplers. The match ended up being what say if it was a catch wrestling match, people would definitely call it boring because both Craig and his opponent just stayed standing the vast majority of 15 minutes. Right, they stayed standing. They kind of went to the ground a little bit, but then they just kept avoiding each other. Right, so like if someone tried to grab onto something, then the guy would pull the arm back, or try to push the arm off if they try to grab around the head, stuff like that, which is actually not necessarily a catch wrestling way of grappling either. So just to let people know, that's another thing that you'll see in mainstream grappling, where it's like if someone tries to grab onto your wrist or grab onto your head, then you just push it off. Also, it'd be part of amateur wrestling because what happens in amateur wrestling, you don't want to let someone get any control over you. Catch wrestling too, to an extent, but a lot of times if someone tries to get a hold of you in catch wrestling, there's always a counter to their move. So it's okay if someone grabs you because the better you are at it, you can counter their move. There's so many counters to arm drags. There's so many counters to a wide variety of techniques that like even Russian 2-on-1s. There's so many counters for basically so many things that you don't really like you might want to even use getting taken down as your strategy to win. And also, two, giving your back is also a strategy to win. And let me explain why. Right. So if you see, for those of you who looked at our YouTube, like our thumbnail for this talk, it shows Farmer Burns giving his back to his opponent. But in that technique in particular that he's showing is actually a winning technique. He's pinning his person. The person was in the original position. He's in all fours, right? So he's in what we call referee's position, or more of a defensive position, because he's on bottom, but he's on his hands and knees, and his opponent is on top of him, right? But there's a reversal that you can do where you roll the person over. You end up giving them your back, but they're being pinned, and they can't cross face you. They can't choke you if you're doing no gi or whatever. It's actually a very, very safe technique, but like inevitably, it's like almost like the first thing I expect to hear from people is like, "Oh, that's bag exposure. Oh, you're giving your back or whatever." But it's like they don't realize that it's actually not happening, especially if you're good at wrestling. You're not going to be like getting choked and all that because I wouldn't say good at wrestling. I'm saying good at catch wrestling, because then you already know how to defend the chokes and stuff. But these pinning and controlling positions, even though you are giving your back to your opponent, are much safer than people realize, right? So that's why I in the thumbnail, at least on our YouTube channel, you can see one of the masters, right? Farmer Burns using a technique where he's giving his back, and it's really not a problem. It's really not a problem whatsoever. So this is one of the things like that you can kind of consider, where it's like, especially this is something you can use to your advantage, because what's happening is that, like, right now, since the mainstream idea is that giving your back is something that's really bad, and you're definitely going to lose, you're going to get choked out or whatever, use that to your advantage, because people, if they take your back, they're so committed, and that's exactly what you want. So same thing with kickboxing. If someone really commits to a move, then that's when you counter strike. A lot of times you can knock someone out when they commit to like doing a roundhouse kick. A lot of times you counter with that cross to their face, get it, and it's led to knockouts in numerous pro kickboxing matches, right? So same thing with someone taking your back. They A lot of people who are infected with the mainstream way of thinking, they think that they're nearing a victory, they're nearing a submission of you, but it's not true, and you can see or you can feel just how committed they will be to trying to choke you out, right? Or trying to do an armbar from the back, like switching it from a choke to an armbar, or all kinds of different moves, like even like a inverted triangle choke or whatever. There's a lot of techniques you can do, right? If you're the person who's taking the back, but um, so you can see that they have all these uh, perceived advantages that, like, if you're good at catch wrestling, or if you understand the principles, then these perceived advantages aren't necessarily there, but you can use their commitment to submitting you to your advantage. I think that's one of my main points here, and I don't know if it will, like, what it'll take to kind of get people to change their minds about that, because, like, no matter um, who wins, or, like, say, even at the jiu-jitsu studio that I roll at, it's like it doesn't matter how I can reverse people, or they're still just gonna think that, like, oh, they just need to do more jujitsu to beat me or whatever. But it's not. It's just, we're doing different styles, but they're doing the mainstream way of grappling, which is ultimately it's just incomplete. So I'm hoping that people, at least fans of Catch Wrestling Alliance, that we can kind of get you to understand that a lot of the mainstream ways of doing grappling aren't necessarily the most advantageous things, but you as a grappler can take their mentality and use it to your advantage, right? If someone tries to grab you, you can let them grab you, because if you know the counter, well, once you know the counter, right? Once you know the counter, then you can counter their attack, right? So the only thing is, like, sometimes points. I was going to say, like, if someone is good at takedowns, let them take you down, right? Because your counter move to their takedown should give you the advantage ultimately, right? Even if it involves giving up your back or whatever, the counter move. And there are tons and tons, like I mentioned, like the picture and the thumbnail for our YouTube video of this particular talk is a classic move, and it's still pretty much taught in some folk style. Um, some people, not everyone, but I mean, it's still, I think it'd be more applicable in folk style wrestling. You don't really see it in freestyle because, again, they've even evolved further away, where it's like if someone gets taken down, they just flatten out onto their belly, and then they wait the 10 seconds for the ref to pick them up or whatever. So um, you won't see that move so much, but in folk style, they do try to fight up, and they do go into the like the folk style parterre version is called a referee's position, and so then that will be used more in folk style. All right. So hopefully you guys are following the ideas. Hopefully, I mean, you don't necessarily have to agree, um, but to be my friend, you must agree. No, I'm just kidding. But I think you just want to try to share this point that there is kind of like this mainstream way of doing things, and then when I see it, it's just like so weird, because I think I'm so involved with the catch wrestling, and of course I do nogi as well, but I definitely see things through the catch wrestling perspective, or the catch wrestling way, and I do things in a more of a catch wrestling way. So when I hear people say these weird things about, like, oh, you're giving your back and whatnot, then I think it's just so strange, but it's telling. At least what it tells me is that you're thinking in the mainstream way, or more, the mainstream kind of jujitsu way. But say like if you're on your back face up, like the modern, or you can call that the jiu-jitsu referee's position, right? Or the jiu-jitsu um, what's called defensive position. Then if you were to try to push somebody, if you're trying to push somebody off of you, you gotta there's a you're also pushing yourself into the ground. You ultimately using what Farmer Burns was one of Farmer Burns' strategies of tiring someone out, where it will be you doing reps, right? So it's like you're working out, and ultimately your muscle can only do so many reps if you're on the bottom. And that was one of his strategies, where it's like if you're on top, you want to just continue pushing someone's head down into the mat, force them to resist you, and then just push them down over and over and over, because our muscles can only do so many repetitions, and that will ultimately fatigue them, right? I think there's like a lot of like jujitsu moves where uh, there's a lot of submissions from your back. So I think people will get maybe more of a false sense of being able to win. It's true, it happens. It happens, like getting a triangle choke or whatever. But if we look at even like the modern no gi matches, I think especially in the ones that are like the higher level ones, or the ones that are like the who's number one and all that, you're seeing people getting beat, like say by like one of the examples that I'm thinking of is like Kennedy Maciel. So I pay attention to him because I used to teach at a Cobrinha school, right? So Cobrinha, like when I was there, they didn't necessarily focus on leg locks. They were very much IBJJF rules oriented. Um, but Kennedy, he's not really doing leg locks on people, but he's still beating them by staying on top, passing their guards, doing these things that I guess would be considered more wrestling oriented. And he's able to, with pressure, counter and block these submission attempts from the bottom, right? So you can go ahead and look on, I think a lot of his matches are on flow grappling and whatnot. So I think he's Kennedy Maciel is somewhat of a good example, because um, like I think because of the school itself is much more IBJJF rules oriented, that when he's in these like no-gi matches, like in ADCC, but also a lot of the who's number one on flow grappling, um, he wouldn't necessarily be the guy that's like was it Muzumeki, who's like trying to go on to like trying to pull guard and try to do a submission. And also, speaking of Muzumeki, he had a match with the this past weekend, and yeah, he didn't get a submission. The guy just kept scrambling out. So so there. But basically, the other guy stayed on top and would scramble out, try to set up some counters, but nothing happened in 15 minutes. Okay, well, let's go ahead and get to your question. Yeah, go ahead and ask any questions or comments. You can tell me off or whatever. Well, it looks like you guys are already commenting. So, and it looks like there's some interesting questions. So, let's go ahead and get to them. Ichi-san, Jaman, what are your thoughts on Brazilian Luta Livre? Yeah, it seems cool. It's cool. It's not exactly catch wrestling, even though it's based in catch wrestling. But it's far enough away that it's totally its own style. So yeah, respect it. And hopefully, I always mention it. Where it's like whenever anybody brings up Luta Libre, we're still talking. But my good friend, who's the anthropologist from Brazil, we still plan on doing another live stream where we talk about Luta Libre again. And so, for those of you who missed that one, we did it last year, I believe. Thiago Niemeyer. You just look for that. So it'll say like Brazilian Jiu Jitsu black belt, talks about Luta Livre, Jiu Jitsu and stuff. So just look back. It should be in our. If we have a playlist for our live streams or our podcast. I think it says podcast. Um, then just scroll down and you'll find it. It's because he's there in Rio, and he's officially an anthropologist by training, and so he definitely has a lot of insight. And he grew up doing jujitsu and seeing and kind of documenting and actually living a lot of that jujitsu history. So, and we'll try to get him on again. Really, actually, it should be soon. We just have to plan it because he's also really busy. He does a lot of things too. He also he's actually in a band, right? So I think the band is doing pretty well too. But we're working on trying to sync up our schedules. All right, Jesse Hines. Yes, to the extent that all grapplers focus only on going to the ground and rolling around until a submission is reached. No one ever thinks about taking down the opponent while remaining upright. All right. No one ever thinks about taking down the opponent while remaining upright. Yeah, almost like they might just fall down or pull guard, right? Jujer Jamala. Are there any catch wrestlers participating in ADCC? Well, we shall see. I've been hearing some rumors, but yeah, we'll find out as it draws near. I don't have people who like like do like the jiu-jitsu mixed with folk style and stuff. So almost like the Nicky Rod. But you saw how well he did, like even though he's only considered like a blue belt, he did very, very well. Noah, I'm sorry, I can't pronounce your handle there. Noachian. ADCC doesn't allow cross faces, neck cranks, and spine locks. From the last time I looked at the rule set, I believe you're still right. You're still correct about that. So, yeah, no crossface stuff. So, and that's the dilemma also, because going back to the main point of like having like people following or believing the mainstream mindset of like jujitsu, even nogi jujitsu. I think nogi is also kind of getting its own kind of like a way of doing things, which almost like it's separating itself a little bit from gi jujitsu. They're still thinking along these lines of like say the IBJJF Worlds and ADCC, and but then they might say like, oh, why aren't catch wrestlers doing all that stuff? But it's like again, I think catch wrestlers can do it and do well, but also I think people have to realize that say if a catch wrestler were to do ADCC and maybe not win it all, it doesn't really say that catch wrestling is bad, but it's like the rules aren't even catch wrestling rules. And I think what we also see is that very few jiu-jitsu people will enter into a lot of the catch wrestling competitions. And also a lot of times it's because of the pin, and then different things like say neck cranks, or even though like authentic professional catch wrestling barred the stranglehold, and for some reason all of a sudden like the stranglehold is the only move they know or something, like they say like, oh, that's unfair and no chokes. It's like, well, so I think the whole emphasis on like having a catch wrestler go into ADCC is kind of a false premise, because just because modern grapplers kind of perceive ADCC as being more wrestling oriented, and a lot of modern no-gi practitioners have even been quoted as calling ADCC a wrestling competition. It's not, and it's still not exactly catch wrestling. So for there to be an emphasis on like, oh, well, catch wrestlers got to be doing ADCC, sure, if they want, totally fine, right? But it's not necessarily going to prove exactly what the mainstream grappler might think it's proving. All right, next question. Z Money. Do you still teach in LA? Yes, I still teach in LA. I teach at UCLA and at Fight Science MMA. No watch. No, can you please help me? Uh, please help me with pronouncing your handle there. No watch. Is that Portuguese? Or I'm totally messing it up. I'm sure it's probably Noakian. Anyway, your comment. I think EBI would be a better platform for catch wrestlers to compete in. All right, I'll check out those rules. Actually, I do like some of the 10th Planet stuff. They seem to be a little bit more open minded, but the EBI, I think it's like a shorter time limit, right? It's like a 10-minute one, and then you have the overtime stuff. Yeah, but they seem to be more open for like all the techniques, right? So that I think you have a point there. Jesse Hines, LOL, you looked a little confused when you read my comment. YouTube doesn't give me enough space to elaborate. All right, well maybe I don't know. Keep trying, Jesse. Jujair, do you consider the match between Barnett and Lister to be representative match between Catch and BJJ? Actually, I didn't watch much of it, but yeah, it seems like potentially where it's like you had Dean on his back, and then that could be kind of like the principle where it's like if you're on your back and you try to push someone who's like heavier than you off of you, it's like you're fighting not only their weight, you're fighting gravity, because what you don't realize is that if you're on your back and you push up, you're also kind of equally pushing yourself back into the mat. So I pretty much just saw the end of that match. So Barnett was able to use his size to get that compression choke. Yeah, so I didn't really see all of that. Noachian. Okay, yeah. Okay, all subs are legal in EBI. All right. Dang. All right. Since I train at a 10th Planet here in Los Angeles, it's kind of funny. We have like so many around. It's a yeah, I'll look into that. I'll look into that because we actually do train. Actually, that could be why I think they like what I'm doing, and that's why I feel kind of comfortable training at a 10th Planet affiliate, because they don't really seem to mind if I try to do, like, I don't try to neck crank everybody, but if I do stuff like that where I try to at least give them some pain and make them do some pain compliance moves, they don't seem to mind. And then a lot of the guys who want to get better, then they'll ask to roll with me, and like they try to find ways to escape some of these moves. So I really do appreciate that. Like I like it where it's like, instead of complaining, whereas like I've had that experience at other jiu-jitsu places that I've taught. So I used to teach not only at one of the Cabrini affiliates, but I taught at this other jiu-jitsu school, which is more gi oriented. So at both of those other places, you get some complaints where it's like, oh, that's not IBJJF, or that's not whatever. And so, but I was, like I was pleasantly surprised when people really didn't seem to mind so much. Like at a 10th Planet, I guess, especially like I don't really try to, like I'm a really nice guy, right? Or I'm really a nice grappler. Maybe I'll try to get. Actually, I've been wanting to see if we can get one of the instructors to kind of talk to like the audience to explain like how what we do is different, because one of the instructors too that I roll with a lot, he actually wants to roll with me a lot because kind of like what we're talking about today, where it's like he's even said that there is a kind of a mainstream way of doing no gi, and so he's used to countering all these kind of like the what's expected to be done, right? And so then he likes to roll with me because I don't always do all that stuff, and like say like, yeah, I'll give him my back and then submit him, like because you pin them and then you can set up a submission. because you basically restrain them by using your back pressure onto them, and you limit their mobility, you limit their chances of countering you, and then you can set up a submission hold. And so actually, it's just been tough because I've already asked this one instructor to record an interview with me, and he totally agreed. But it's just our schedules also. So it's always going back to the schedules, right? So, but hopefully really soon, because I think he's a really articulate guy, and he can explain better. And this is why sometimes I like to have someone who's like only done like the nogi, or who only comes from a jujitsu background to explain it, because I think most people do have that mainstream grappling mentality. And so, like, what better than to have someone who's come from that to explain the differences? Because even though I do nogi all the time, I'm still, or I think a lot of people who listen to me consider me like an outsider or whatever, even though I've done jujitsu for a long time. Jesse Hines, putting the opponent on the ground while remaining standing is more applicable to a real fight, so that no one kicks you in the back of the head, for example, when you're on the ground. BJJ blows. Okay, I think you've made your point, Jesse. Yeah, that's the thing. It's like you have a lot of these traditional wrestling styles that that's how you win, really. Whoever stays standing and then throws the other person down, they're the winner, right? So um, it gives you a lot of advantages if you can stay or basically be on top. If you can get the takedown and be on top, there's a lot of advantages. For catch wrestling, we have a lot of counters, so getting taken down, and if you end up on the bottom, it can be fine. Um, but like you just have to know the counters. Basically, you just got to train and stuff. But yeah, catch wrestling does have that top down approach, just like a lot of traditional styles have that top down approach. And ultimately, it's weird that so many styles have this top down approach, but they're not considered mainstream, really. Henry Lopez, not catch wrestling, but Craig Jones' Power Bottom DVD isn't really rate giving the back, or doesn't really rate giving the back. Has a lot of catch wrestling minded techniques, maybe revolutionary and BJJ, but just a bunch of catch minded techniques. Potentially, yeah. If you can send me a copy, that'd be great. No, but I think so. And actually, I think that's probably why we've been talking about Craig Jones a lot, or at least me. I've been sharing a bunch of his comments and stuff, because he might not know it, but he's actually like sharing a lot of, like, I guess, like catch wrestling minded things, kind of like how you're saying, where it's like catch wrestling minded techniques, or even catch wrestling minded points of view, where a long time, like was a few weeks ago, I shared a joke he was making about chokes, and he actually just explained how people used to see chokes, right? So chokes have been barred in the professional catch wrestling, and for the reasons that were at least a few of the reasons that Craig Jones joked about in one of his videos, where it's like, oh, any white belt could choke out a higher belt on accident, where it's like a fluke. So they shouldn't necessarily be valued that much and all. I shared it, I'm sure, in one of our live streams. So um, you can go and check back on there. I think it's one where Craig Jones is wearing a cowboy hat. It's funny, and we share it. But yeah, it's like, I think that's why we're kind of talking about him more and more. Hopefully, we'll see what happens when, if with him as he develops, right? Because I guess he's probably like evolving into like this kind of more wrestling oriented grappler. And you're right, Henry. It might not necessarily be revolutionary for us, right? But yeah, it's like revolutionary because it's like you get a mainstream popular grappler showing you these more wrestling oriented moves, and then it's like mind blowing for people who are like stuck in that mainstream mindset, right? Yeah. Yeah, yeah. Sorry, I forgot how to pronounce it, but I'm just gonna call you Noachian, Noachian. Right. He named his instructional power bottom. That's funny. Yeah, yeah. He's always trying to make jokes. Jesse Hines. Yes, we're on the same page now. Also, I think it would be much more efficient from a self defense perspective to train in the context of a sport to use and to modify catch wrestling control techniques. Yeah, I think the sport way is one way to kind of uh, like just get practice, or we say like get more mat time where you can try to test out and implement your techniques, so you get used to finding the situations, or used to recognizing the situations when you can use your technique. So yeah, the kind of like the sparring and stuff is like so important for you to use the actual techniques. It's just like say if you're learning a language or something, like I totally see the value in like the immersion training, right? There's so many, at least in Los Angeles, there's tons of language immersion schools, right? So they take your kid, when they're really young, and then they just only speak to them at least 50% of the day. To even like, I know some schools nearby, they have the language immersion program is like 90% of the day is in another foreign language, even if they have no experience with that language. And then like as the years progressed, and they decrease from 90% to like 80 and 70. But these kids, like they pick it up. And so kind of the same idea, where it's like you just gotta, instead of like doing a technique once or twice or just drilling it, you have to uh, you have to use it, right? You have to be put in situations where you have to find out how and when to use it, right? So um, yeah, I agree totally on that. And that goes like also with like kind of like the was like the self-defense training, where you can kind of, and I've talked about it a lot, where it's like I see catch wrestling as one of these really good base styles that allows you to easily incorporate these other things like the self-defense stuff. If KDB, if no catch wrestling school is available nearby, how does one begin catch wrestling? Um, Consider doing our online course. Really, you can just go to our website, catchwrestlingalliance.com. We basically have like the fundamentals courses there, and then a couple extra ones to kind of give you a better idea of catch wrestling, because the fundamentals ones just goes over techniques. And then if you're a member, then I've been trying to add more like different videos in our, like we have this community section where I'll post a lot of these other videos, because I found a bunch right, that were from some seminars we did in Singapore. So I try to give you more examples of the techniques and how to use them in the wild, right? So that's on our website, catchwrestlingalliance.com. Shinhei E. Are there many big time BJJ grapplers? Or there be many big time BJJ grapplers. You wouldn't know they are doing catch wrestling techniques, but they wouldn't know it or even want to admit it. That some technique they use is like a rip off of catch wrestling. Yeah, like sometimes even if they know it, then they'll be like, "No, this is my own creation. I discovered it." That's what you see sometimes too. It's like, but no one's really discovered anything, especially with grappling, because humans have been grappling for since the dawn of time, and I'm sure whatever move someone is named after themselves, we'll probably find some cave painting with that same technique being done. So I don't know. People gotta uh, not be so arrogant. Jesse Hines. I'm also curious to find out if catch wrestling is a sport derivative of Kampfringen. Fringen. Kampfringen. I don't know. I know that there was I think some Flemish influence, because like a long time ago, then as catch wrestling was evolving, there was some influence from mainland Europe, as some it was like some of the Flemish, like, because again that northern area, I think there was a lot of textile work and stuff like that. So then people uh, were in that industry, and they also had kind of like their way of grappling and stuff that was partial influence to catch wrestling. Jujair. I would love to see on this channel some solo catch drills or drills with a wrestling dummy, especially that in some countries most of the gyms are closed now with this COVID thing. Oh, what country are you in, Jujair? Um, yeah, actually, it's kind of funny. I did a couple of videos like that, but it was right at the beginning of COVID. Um, so you would have to go back like really far in our on our YouTube channel. But yeah, there are. Maybe I can revamp it, right? So maybe do a couple more new ones. You can also feel free to join our our online academy, right? CWA Academy. We also have stuff like that in there too. Noach, I saw your video where you competed against the English guy. I think you pulled off a gotch toe hold. That's a tough hold to finish, at least for me. Yeah, it took a while to set up. That was like a 17-minute match, but that's what I like. How do I say it? It's like I prefer matches like that where you get like in our matches in England and also in our matches in Catch Wrestling Alliance, we have a 20-minute time limit, so you can set up that whole kind of like fatiguing the person. You can set it. You can use these strategies or the catch wrestling strategies better. And so my opponent, even though he was a very talented jiu-jitsu practitioner under Damian Maya, um, uh, I was able to set that up. Yeah, I kept, so like from what I recall, right, like he kept on trying to get up from referee's position, and so I decided to just catch his foot before he was able to sit out, really. So yeah, that's how you got to do it. You have to you really set them up and maybe kind of see how and like if you have these longer matches, you can kind of see how they behave, and then you can see if you can't catch them right doing their kind of normal moves. You can set it up. Shinhee E. Many BJJ guys wouldn't know the difference between the key lock and the bicep slicer. Correct. I think a lot of times they just call it I think they call everything bicep slicer. Yep, I agree. Because actually I had that experience too when I was teaching at the Cobrinha affiliate. Like everyone's like, "Oh, what is that? Or is that legal in IBJJF or whatever?" So it was a little bizarre. But of course, at the MMA school I teach at, you're fine with everything. Seems like at 10th Planet, they seem all right also. And the affiliate I go to doesn't talk about flat Earth or any other weird stuff that Eddie Bravo sometimes is criticized for. So everyone at the place I go to just focuses on training. Okay, Jujair. I'm from Romania. They prohibit only contact sports. Sorry. Darn. My alarm went off. Okay, sorry about that. Jujair. I'm from Romania. They prohibited only contact sports practicing with this COVID thing. So I resorted to a boxing bag and a wrestling dummy that I found in an abandoned ex-Soviet wrestling gym. Wow, that sounds awesome. Yeah, use it. There's so many things you can do with the dummy. Like you can practice your your snap downs. You can practice your double leg takedowns. You can practice suplexes. Um, oh, there's so much. There's so much. So let me see if you can't scroll down. I'm not sure if it's in a playlist, if it's on our podcast playlist, but I definitely did a live version. So look, so it must have been the beginning of 2020. Darn, I know we've put out a lot of videos, but I think I have a few where you might see in the thumbnail it is shows the dummy. I have a brown dummy. It's actually right just on the other side of the camera here. It's right there. Actually, I have the dummy and its child. I have a really small one. It's like a kind of a novelty one or whatever. Yeah, so they're really useful. So yeah, see if you can't do that. Let me know if you can't find the video. Maybe we can try to do some more with that. Okay, but just a lot. You can also think of, like, say, if you see our videos, if there's any takedown, you can try to at least simulate it as best you can with the throwing dummy. Shinhei key lock is compound submission, bicep cutter is compression hold. Yeah. One is actually just considered like a hold where you can control the person so that you can pin them, not necessarily a submission even. Marshall Street. BJJ guys steal catch wrestling techniques, and BJJ gets all the credit. Thumbs down. Yeah, it's like speaking of 10th Planet, it's like Eddie Bravo took a wrestling move and then he created his whole style, and it's like it's spread all over the world, and it's like pretty amazing. It's called a short arm scissors from Noakian. Yeah. So kind of going back to the original point where it's like we're kind of suffering because there's kind of like this mainstream understanding of what grappling is, but coming from a catch wrestling perspective, we're not the mainstream. So we get weird comments from some of the videos we put out, but it just shows that whoever comments, they're just stuck in that kind of mainstream understanding. So hopefully they can evolve, right? Jujair. Yep, found the wrestling dummy videos. Thanks. All right, cool. Hopefully they can help you. All right, so if anybody who's not in LA, or if you're not near my good friend on the East Coast, John Strickland with American Hook Wrestling, then you can find both of our programs online. John is on Facebook. Also, you can just go to our website, catchwrestlingalliance.com, to our, it should be a link there that says CWA Academy. So you can train there. But we also have some standalone courses that, like, say, one we just did, which is like pressure passing. I want to do a few different videos or few different courses on it. So that's why I called the first one Pressure Passing Volume 1. I already want to do like maybe at least 3 volumes where it'd be like pressure passing from different scenarios. So we'll work on getting the second one out really soon. Shinhei, 10th Planet would be better place to be if you had catch wrestling background. At least they wouldn't ban you from doing what you know. Yep. Short scissors and is another good catch move. Yep. And so yeah, that's kind of been my experience. So I don't know if anybody else is trains at a 10th Planet, but they didn't really seem to get upset. If I do a lot of catch wrestling moves, a lot of times they seem really interested. So I think that's one of the reasons why I train there. Also because of no gi, right? It's kind of weird. Like at the MMA school that I teach at, only now they're starting to add more no gi classes. I think it's because one of the main coaches of the MMA team is more of a gi guy, so a lot of their jiu-jitsu classes were gi. So then it's like, well, I don't want to spend more time in gi, so then that's why I'm at 10th Planet, which is nearby. Z Money, what got you into catch wrestling? It was actually the Chinese martial arts. I spent a lot of time doing the Chinese kickboxing, Chinese wrestling, a lot of these things. I even did like sumo wrestling and stuff. So all of these things have a top-down approach. The Chinese kickboxing also has a lot of like takedowns in it. So a lot of standing takedowns, a lot of catching kicks and all that. So it has this top-down approach, but then when I was trying like jujitsu and all that, like it didn't, right? So then there was kind of like this disconnect, and I was just trying to find something that matched kind of like my framework. So I guess I started in these non-mainstream martial arts. Um, so when I was trying a mainstream one, it didn't quite match, and so then I just kept researching until I found something that matched. And I believe that catch wrestling is one of the best styles you can that can help you succeed in all endeavors. Like if you want to compete in no-gi or MMA or whatever. The real deal. Hi, do you still have your class in Culver City? I visited a long time ago. Oh well, no, no. Well, we're in Fight Science MMA, so that's in just LA City. The area is called Mid City, Marshall Street. Thank you so much for passing along your knowledge and helping to keep Catch's Catch Can alive. Well, thank you for your support, Marshall. All right. Okay. So, for those of you who want to help support us, you can become a member of our YouTube channel, right? So, if you don't necessarily want to train, consider becoming a member of our YouTube channel. I think it's like $2 a month or whatever. And it really helps. We also try to give you extra exclusive access to different videos and stuff. I try to do different things for all our supporters because we appreciate everybody. All right, so consider that, or if you want to actually do our program, like the CWA Academy, that's available, or if you just want to learn some specific kind of one-off things, one-off topics, then we have like the pressure pass system available on our website. We also have like a no-gi judo course that was filmed by myself and a judo expert, right? He's a national champion. He also teaches at one of the oldest judo schools in Los Angeles. So we have these different courses available. So you can enroll in any one of those through our website, catchwrestlingalliance.com. All right. So it's almost an hour. So we'll go ahead and cut it off here. Hopefully everyone has a great weekend, and we'll see you next week. Right. So let's elevate. Basically, our goal is to help you to learn this so you can elevate your grappling, and together we'll keep real wrestling alive. Thank you very much.